This is Philip Carr-Gomm, Tea with a Druid, 121. Do say if you're here and that you can hear me okay, and that the sound and the vision is working. And I'm going to start speaking because that's what you do with this program. If you're presenting it. And Heather is first in. Heather Brewer, hello. Closely followed by Tobias Meta and Susan and John and George. Hooray, you're here. Lovely to see you. Well, watching our screens every day, it's... did I see somebody saying something? Watching our screens every day is very sad and difficult, isn't it? And but it's great to be with you. And I paused there because I saw somebody saying "Hello, Granddad," and I was wondering if, but I'm not sure that I read that correctly. But that's okay. So last week we made a lot of noise. And that was great. And there's something in that, you know, we howled to the moon, and we let go of all our worries and concerns and just shouted them out. And I was really fascinated, and that was suggested by somebody who'd been watching this program, who said that in his small town in the southern United States, every evening the residents go out and howl. And then I read on a BBC website of the people in Belper in Derbyshire go out and moo like cows every evening, 8 o'clock every evening. They all go out, 6:30 every evening. They go out and go moo like that. And the guy who started it thought it was kind of that he would just get ridiculed and people wouldn't take it seriously. But everybody got into it and they did it. And I think that's what's happening with our Thursday clapping for the NHS that we have here in the UK now. In the beginning, our kind of British Reserve makes us feel a bit kind of embarrassed that we're going out and doing this. But in the end, people, I don't know if you've seen on the television, but people are banging kettles and hitting saucepans and so on, you know, and they are clapping for the NHS and for the frontline workers and for all the people who are keeping the show on the road. But I think people are also expressing that making a noise is helping people just to express their feelings as well. But a rather interesting thing is happening at the same time, which is that the world is getting quieter. And this is literally happening. Scientists have told us it's happening. You know, that eerie quality where the streets are quieter. It feels like when there's snow on the ground and there are less people driving cars. So it feels like Christmas Day when nobody's driving. There are less aircraft and less cars and less so and so. But there's some really. I'll give some links to this in the blog post. But there are there's some research that seismologists you may have read about have done that the Earth is literally quieter because we're making less noise, less machinery is being operated, less trains are going, less aircraft are going, less cars are going, and so it's quieter. And seismologists are able to hear the vibrations of the Earth much more, much less interfered with by human activity. So it really is quieter. That's wonderful. And so we're going into this quietening period. And I don't know if you can feel that. I mean, we're into week 4 of the lockdown now. And I don't know if you're experiencing this. Do tell me in the comments. But the first few weeks, I was getting used to the experience and actually being incredibly busy adjusting our lives and the work of the order to this new normal and so actually, and lots of people were making contact. So there was more social engagement. There might have been physical distancing, but there was actually much more social closeness in some ways, albeit over the internet and the telephone and so on. But now things are settling down and I can feel this quietening happening. So tell me if you're experiencing that as well. And again, as I mentioned in last week's tea, at the same time, I can feel this underlying sadness. I mean, what a sad time! Thousands and thousands of people dying. So there's a sadness that I can feel. There's a frustration I can feel because I can't go and have a coffee in town with friends. So there's that sadness. There's frustration, but at the same time, a sort of peacefulness and an acceptance. And it's almost like as if, would it be an exaggeration to say this, that if you had been given the task of looking down on the earth and some great beings saying to you, how can we take care of this planet and slow down this crazy, insane pace of growth that's occurring in the world? How can you do this with a minimum of suffering? Perhaps, you would have come up with something like this, because although obviously people are suffering hugely, all the families and the people who've died and so on, but the how else could we have slowed the train down? I'm seeing lots of messages coming through now. Maybe a difference in reaction between introverts and extroverts. So I'm an introvert, so I guess the idea there is that introverts are maybe adapted more easily to this time. So yes, these are great comments. I would love for every year a quietness happen for 1 month. Not for some negative reason, but more for the healing of ourselves and the planet. Lindsay said that. Wouldn't that be lovely if there was a month every year where everybody agreed just to stop, just slow down, just don't run the aircraft, don't run the trains, just slow right down. Yeah, that would be wonderful. So let's look at the last 2 weeks. We've been looking at Peter Corsten, this GP friend, doctor friend up in Scotland, who's come up with these 4 suggestions. I want to look at the last 2 of them together with you because I think they're really interesting. So his second 2 suggestions go like this: be a midwife of the new, as well as a hospice worker to the old. While much suffering arises from loss, give your love and energy also to activities that point to what is to come. So he's using these terms that, as somebody working in the medical field will be familiar to him: a midwife of the new and a hospice worker to the old. But by saying new and old, not specifying people, he's broadening it. So you can take it as people, but you can also take it as something more, the new that's trying to be born in the world, the old that is passing away. And I think that's really interesting, because even if you look at it in terms of hospice worker from a spiritual perspective, you're helping people who are making that transition. So there are these 2 liminal points of transition into this life and then out of this life. And you're working at that level, either at a medical level with that, or at a soul level, if you like. And that brings to mind, the concept of doulas who can either be birth doulas or death doulas, people who are like anamkaras, who are like companions at a spiritual level and on a heart level, to help in these transitions. So there's a call to be present to those transitions in the world. And so even if we're not with anybody who's in labor at the moment or is about to give birth to a baby, still we can midwife the new that's trying to come in. And there's this real battle, I sense, as well, between, on the one hand, the optimist in us who wants to say, yes, this gives us the possibility for something really new to arise in society, for us to really do things in a new way. and then the pessimist in us that says, well, nothing's really going to change. We're just going to go back to the old ways as soon as we can. Really, this third suggestion of his moves into his fourth and final suggestion, which is choose to make sense of this apparent catastrophe as humanity's last chance to avert a much greater disaster. From the collapse of the old economic order, commit to building the earthwise, conscious, connected, and enduring society that will follow. So again, you can be skeptical and you can be pessimistic and say, well, dream on, but the banks and governments will just ensure that we go back to the old normal that was destroying the earth and creating massive inequality. Or we can say, maybe there's a chance that things can change. And I'd like to just give you links. I'll put them in the message thing here after this, and I'll put it up in my blog as well. Just this week, I've come across three links, three websites, which really give me hope. And they're not New Age websites; they're not spiritual websites. One is an article in The Guardian about the donut model of economics, which Amsterdam City Council is apparently wanting to put into place, which is a model of sustainability and equity and so on, to run the city in a different way that values, fresh air, clean water, all the things that we cherish and so on. And they're hoping that other countries and other towns will be interested in that as well. So very down to earth and very real. It's actually I think it's going to be actually enacted. Second thing, a group of MPs, or there's an initiative in France. There's a website that's been set up called The Day After. And this Day After website is an official French government website where you, as a member of the public, as a French citizen, are invited to contribute to a consultation about what sort of world you want. There are various topics. You can see them in strips. Even if you can't read French, just Google Translate it or something and look at it. It's just fascinating because there are questions like, what do you value the most? What kind of world do you want to see? What sort of economics do you want to see, and so on. So there's this real attempt amongst the politicians to ask everyday people in France for their aspirations and ideas and suggestions and all the rest of it. And finally, the third link that I'm going to give you is written by a friend of ours who lives just down the road, who's a professor at the university here, and it's called Modernity Without Its Clothes. The pandemic crisis shines a light on the futilities of control. And it's a kind of critique and a way of looking at how we're trying to understand the situation and how we got into this mess, and with some ideas of how we can get out of it, not by controlling our way out and not by, but it's high-powered stuff. I'm going to try and get Andy to come and talk with me, and we'll record a Zoom conversation between us with a bit of luck, because he's a brilliant guy, and his insights I think are really important. And so watch out for that. I can see Isalinda's asking, what's the name of the website? I'll put them up. I can't do two things at once, Isalinda. I'll put these websites up very soon. So there we are. I want to invite you now to let's go with this new. I haven't been able to read the comments, so I don't know whether you're feeling this quietening as well. But let's go into this quietening. Let's take this opportunity to enter more into the silence. Let's go into the sacred grove together and do that. And as the frenzy of the outside world has started to die down because of what's been happening, so we can perhaps allow some of the chatter and the busyness of our minds and our hearts to settle too, as we become aware of being seated here in front of our computers or tablets or phones. And you might find a way in which, just by slowly breathing in, holding for a moment, and then slowly breathing out, you can start to feel the tension just dropping away from you. We'll do it one more time. Slowly breathing in, holding for a moment, and then breathing out fully and deeply as the tension falls away. And we find ourselves approaching this clearing in the forest, the sacred grove of the Druids, this place of peace and tranquility. And as we walk through the trees, it's as if we can feel our worries and anxieties just dropping away until we find ourselves in the clearing. And then you might like to sit down and just feel the earth beneath you. You can feel the life in the earth, all the energy in the earth. But it's a gentle, strong, quiet energy. And you can feel it flowing up into your being, bringing with it health and healing, strength and a sense of being grounded. And you breathe in the energy of the trees around you, and you feel their presence of peace and of power. And you look up at the branches of the trees and the leaves, and the clear sky above. And you breathe in this clear sky, really appreciating the way in which the air is clearer now. And as you breathe in the energy of the sky, you notice how the vitality that it brings meets the energy of the earth within the center of your being. And then let's just sit in the grove, just opening to the peace and the quiet and the silence, knowing that as we do this, hundreds of us all over the world, all around the globe, are doing exactly this at exactly this time. Deep within the center of our beings, we find peace. And we sense this peace radiating out from this circle, from this grove, across the land. May there be peace on earth and peace in our hearts. And then breathing in fully and deeply, we gently allow our awareness of the grove to fade, knowing that we can return to the grove at any time, and also keeping within the still center of our beings that sense of peace and calm. So retaining that sense of peace and calm, gradually allow yourself to let the awareness of the sacred grove fade as you become aware of being seated in front of your screen, seated in front of your computer or your tablet. So I hope you found that peaceful. There's a way in which tuning into the silence of nature, and of course, there are many kinds of silence, aren't there? Actually, as people were saying in the comments, there's lots of bird song, but there is a peacefulness and a quiet that we now know scientifically, as I mentioned, is actually happening all over the world. And maybe, just maybe, this quietness is creating the conditions for us as human beings, if we wish, to tune in, to hear the still voice of our souls inside. Maybe this hush is allowing more people the ability to hear the voice of the soul. So many thanks. I shall pop up these links soon. I think you probably know it already, but I'll say, if in case you don't know, that every week I'm doing a longer meditation. If you'd like longer meditations on a website called the Garden of Flowing in Perpetual Happiness, and they're just long meditations of about half an hour, going into these states in a much more extended way, often using the technology of the Yoga Nidra, which is lying down, so you can absolutely let go and deepen your experience. If I'll give a link to that as well, if that would be of interest to you. And thank you, Peter Corsten, for your lovely thoughts, your beautiful thoughts that finish in that wonderful grounded way about how we can help to create a better world. And I'll put those up as well. So lots to put up today, but I'll do that later on this evening. And so it'll be on the website in a couple of hours probably. And much love, many blessings, and I'll see you again next week. Okay, bye.